Yeah? Hello, my wondrous friends. I hope your day has been as fine as that fine face you got on ya. I'm here with another Smash video because of course I'm doing another Smash video. With Smash Ultimate looming on the horizon, you think I can just sit around twiddling my thumbs? No. More Smash, always. I recently did a video where I revisited the first 3 Smash games, card in the corner if you haven't seen it, but I didn't cover Subspace Emissary because I figured, dude, this is Subspace Emissary we're talking about. It would be physically impossible for me to just touch on Subspace Emissary. So here we are. Buckle in, cross your arms, clench your teeth, and brace yourself for what is probably the silliest and coolest thing Nintendo has ever done and perhaps ever will do. It is extremely hard for me to believe that it has been over 10 years since Brawl came out. If you haven't had a chance to experience this campaign in that time, then I highly suggest giving it a go, or at the very least watching all the cutscenes before you watch this video, as I'm going full spoiler here. Brawl came during a very different era of Nintendo history. Nowadays, Nintendo isn't really concerned with topping themselves. Instead of advancing and getting bigger and bigger, a lot of their series simply change and iterate. The company is often happy simply exploring new ideas and leaving it at that, maybe even removing something for every new thing they add, and I'd say at times they even play things a little too safe in terms of scope in order to keep their costs down. There are absolutely some recent examples of them putting more ambition into their games, and that's terrific, but it's not exactly a given with every series. But Brawl came at a time when a sequel meant bigger and better. There are many examples of this in the GameCube era and some of the Wii era, but Brawl is one of the best ones. The game boasted a wealth of new features, such as a level editor, the ability to save replays and screenshots, lots of fun new versus options, and of course just tons and tons of new characters. The piece de resistance, though, at least for people like me, was its single-player offerings. See, Smash 64 had its little single-player classic mode where you fight through a series of weird matches against modified foes. Then Melee came along with a better version of that same idea. More weird matches, but this time linked together with short platforming sections, complete with Nintendo baddies like Goombas and Octoroks, and even a few silly little cutscenes between stages. Then after that, Nintendo, Sakurai, whoever, still in that mindset of everything we do needs to get better and better, set out to take the adventure mode idea all the way in the next Smash game. The result was Subspace Emissary, a fully fledged platforming adventure game to complement all the other content Brawl already had. And when I say platforming, I really mean platforming. Here the fun little sections used to shake up the experience in Melee are now a substantial part of the game. These are actual levels, like you move through them, killing little baddies, sometimes collecting keys and trying to figure out which way to go. And though I am extremely happy that Smash Ultimate will bring us its own adventure mode in the form of the World of Light campaign, mostly because I expected literally nothing in this department, the mode does seem to lack these kinds of platforming sections. There are other elements that sound really amazing, like a more detailed and interactive world map and skill trees and spirits and all that, but returning to the format of just match after match after match is indeed a little disappointing. And that's because what we've got here in Subspace Emissary is a jolly good time. It's the sort of thing I never knew I needed in my life until I got it. It ain't gonna win any awards for level design. I mean, when every character has completely different abilities and moves differently, you've got to design your levels in fairly broad strokes. But that character variety is also what makes it so fun. It's fun to put all these fighters in new, unique scenarios, and instead of just using your moves to fight other fighters, you use them to take out baddies and interact with the stages and move forward. Speaking of baddies and stages, and of variety, there's a lot of fun stuff on offer here. They could have probably gotten away with populating the world with fighting polygons and all that, just cheap, simplified versions of the pre-existing characters. But there is a surprising number of unique enemies to fight through, some of which are really weird and cool. I mean, look at these scythe guys. What even are these? They're scary. And like any good platformer, the stages contain all sorts of interesting obstacles and mechanics. The last area is a huge maze of returning locales, and it's got a big map and everything. This part is actually a little aggravating, truth be told, but I can really appreciate the scope of it. I mean, it's got a map. These stages are visually interesting as well. You move through a huge array of environments, and some of the landscapes are really epic and beautiful. This is a Wii game, so it ain't gonna win any awards for graphics, but the art style is great. Okay, here's the thing though. All the platforming adventure stuff, that ain't even the half of it. On a purely mechanical level, Subspace Emissary is probably only pretty good. Like, it's fine. But the levels and the baddies and the cool backgrounds, those aren't what makes Subspace Emissary a mode that will go down in history as very possibly the coolest thing Nintendo has ever done. It's amazing because it's the crossover event we'd previously only dreamed of. I mean, Smash was already Nintendo's big crossover series. That's the whole point, and it's one of the things things that makes it so much fun. Duking it out as all your favorite Nintendo characters. Jigglypuff versus Ganondorf, Pikachu versus Captain Falcon, Mario versus Bowser. Wait, bad example, but you get the picture. Subspace Emissary, though? Again, it takes this idea of a crossover and really runs with it. What if instead of just having these characters all fight each other, they were able to play out a story together? What if all Nintendo characters from all the different franchises lived on some weird fantasy planet, and there was a whole plot with epic pre-rendered CG cutscenes? 10 years later, and it is still hard for me to believe that this is a thing that happened because it's just too cool. It's totally stupid. This shared universe idea makes absolutely no sense. None of it can fit into any canon, yet for whatever reason, I just can't think of anything in this world that could be more amazing than Samus and Link and Captain Olimar chilling and fighting guys together. But that's exactly what Subspace Emissary is. It's the ultimate version of the idea that Smash was built upon, of a kid in their room playing with all their Nintendo toys and making them fight. It's the biggest what-if scenario we've seen about Nintendo and their characters. I could spend way too long gushing about all the crossover coolness on display here because all in all, they animated about an hour of cutscenes for the campaign. An hour. That's almost a movie right there. They could have added on an extra half hour and called this Nintendo, the movie. But for the sake of brevity, let's just touch on some of the cooler stuff. The opening sets the scene perfectly. Kirby and Mario are fighting in this epic sky stadium, which is of course a great callback to Smash 64's intro. Soon Petey Piranha comes along and snatches up Princess Peach and Princess Zelda, and you've got to fight him. This is amazing for two reasons. First, it's like, okay, I'm fighting a boss in a Smash Brothers game that isn't Master Hand. Subspace Emissary has bosses. This mode is for real. More importantly though, this is our first exposure to this shared world of Nintendo characters. Like, Petey Piranha has got Zelda in a cage and Kirby is trying to save her. And they're all on an epic sky stadium. And then Wario comes along and starts turning people into trophies, and Meta Knight's halberd flies in and starts spewing baddie gunk everywhere, and there's this mysterious cloaked figure, and it's like, this mode is for real. Then a little later, we get another good crossover moment. See, DK and Mario know each other. DK shows up to all the parties and spin-offs and whatnot, but DK and Mario's games never cross over. If you're talking mainline titles, these two guys seem to live in different universes. That's why it's so awesome to see DK chasing a group of Mario baddies that have stolen a bunch of his bananas. Watching Diddy shoot up some bullet bills with his pistols? It's bizarre, man. It shouldn't be bizarre, but it totally is. Oh, but it gets better. Bowser comes along and messes stuff up, because of course he does, and DK saves Diddy by punching him somewhere, leading to what is one of the biggest whoa moments in the whole campaign. Diddy lands somewhere. We can see a crashed R-Wing, which was shot down by the halberd. All of a sudden, the legendary Pokemon Rayquaza just pops out of a lake, and then Fox pops out of his R-Wing to save Diddy, and then Fox and Diddy have to fight Rayquaza. It was such a big moment for me because it was when it really hit home how anything goes in Subspace Emissary. Anything goes. If it's from a Nintendo game, it could pop up at any time, and even the wackiest and most disparate character pairings are possible. And of course, the campaign tries to get the most out of these odd pairings, constantly contrasting both their personalities and their styles. You've got Captain Olimar meeting up with Captain Falcon, who accidentally kills a bunch of his Pikmin. You've got heroic Link happening upon a silly, sleepy Yoshi. You've got serious business Sheik teaming up with dainty, happy-go-lucky Peach. You've got Zero Suit Samus infiltrating a ship with Pikachu. And on top of being a funny pairing, Samus actually saves Pikachu from basically being tortured, which is pretty darn dark. And like any good crossover, you've even got some of the characters mistaking each other for enemies and fighting. I mean, you get two big egos like Meta Knight and Lucario together, of course they're gonna want to fight each other. Another great thing the characters do is silly surprise intros. Oh no, that bad guy's gonna get that Nintendo character I love. Oh no, they were saved by that other Nintendo character I love, who is now in this story. It's a cheap way to rile up the player, but you know what? It's just so darn effective. And Subspace Emissary has these surprise drop-ins in spades. And actually, one of them really was a surprise for me. When the Ancient Minister's robe burns away, and all at once it's like, boom! Rob is a character! Oh man, I was cheering at the screen. I only wish more of the newcomers could have been revealed like this, as complete surprises, unlocked by coming across them in a big story mode. Can you imagine how cool that would be? Like if you didn't even know they were in the new Smash until they came and saved the day? Anyway, swinging back around to the crossover epicness, there's still so much more that Subspace Emissary throws at you. Like fighting Ridley? I'm sorry, there are very few things in this world as awesome as a Ridley boss fight. then I don't really know anything about Earthbound, but the fact that something as relatively obscure as this weirdo robot with the kid inside would make it into a big Nintendo crossover experience is pretty cool. I do wish Zelda had gotten some boss representation as well, and maybe Star Fox, especially when you've got this other robot guy who isn't even from any Nintendo games and he's a boss. But what we've got here is still just terrific. Oh, and of course, there's the moment when it turns out that Bowser and Wario aren't acting alone. They're taking orders from Ganondorf. Oh, did you hear the sound of me dying just now? Because I died. I'm dead. And that leads us into what really ties this whole experience together, the story. Just seeing all these Nintendo characters doing stuff together is cool enough, but it's made even better by the developing plot with its twists and turns. There's no dialogue at all. Well, almost no dialogue. But it still manages to move forward at a good rate and keep you interested. The bad guys are turning everyone into trophies. The Robs are setting off all these big subspace bombs, and it's super sad how they just kind of accept their fates and die. King Dedede makes off with a bunch of Wario's trophies, so there's some conflicting villainy going on. Different groups of characters fight the bad guys in different places and slowly group together as the story progresses. At one point, just about everyone is trophified, but it turns out a handful got left behind and they have to save the others. And if you'll pardon me for a moment, the kid inside of me needs to explain this next scene because he is much more qualified than I am for this. There's this one part where Ganondorf wants to set off all these subspace bombs, and Rob is like, no, I changed my mind, I'm a good guy now. And then they go off anyway, and everyone has to run away, and it's like, whoa! So this giant Death Star space warship comes out of the black hole, and it's like, whoa, and everyone's in the halberd, and they're like, no, and it blows up the halberd. And then the R-Wing and Samus's gunship and all the different Nintendo ships come out, and they're like, yeah, and Kirby comes in on his dragoon, and he's like, Papa Sakurai loves me most, and Shwing, he destroys a giant gun, and Ganondorf's like, no! But then everyone gets sucked into the black hole. Ah! And it's the best thing. Period. It's just the best thing. Unfortunately, despite all that epic, cool awesomeness, Subspace Emissary ends on something of a low note, and I feel like it's only fair to talk about it. So it turns out that Bowser and Wario aren't the only bad guys, and Ganondorf's actually pulling the strings, right? Awesome. Oh, but then it turns out that Master Hand is actually pulling the strings. Oh, even more awesome. Of course it was him the whole time. But then it turns out that this synthwave album cover butterfly man named Taboo was pulling the strings. What? Who is this guy? Apparently you can kind of figure out who he is and what he's doing if you dig into it, but at the time I remember just being kind of confused. Why couldn't Master Hand have been the secret final boss? Wouldn't that have been fitting enough? It had to be this guy, I don't even know. Out of all of these Nintendo characters that I do know, had to be him. This guy who wasn't even established within this story? That's not really the worst of it though. Before you fight him, Sonic comes in and breaks his wings so he can't turn everyone into trophies again. And like, the idea of Sonic making a big surprise entrance right at the end to save everyone is like the coolest. But something about the way they did it was just more confusing. There was no lead up to the scene. He just kind of comes in, breaks the guy's wings, and it's like, okay, what did that do? Is that it? It doesn't show any of the other characters gearing up for the fight or anything. It's just this awkward little thing that's over in like 2 seconds. Then when you beat Taboo, absolutely nothing. Roll credits. After that whole campaign with all of its crazy cool cutscenes, we get absolutely no wrap-up whatsoever. Not even something as simple as the characters congratulating each other. Nothing about them going back to their homes or anything. No final gag. It's just, okay, you saved everything. Bye. Thanks for playing. Gotta say, it's really, really anticlimactic. It's a crime to end something this epic in such a weirdly lame way. Fortunately, the ending doesn't do much to diminish an absurdly awesome experience like Subspace Emissary. Sadly, I really don't have much hope that we'll see anything like it again. As I've said, I'm happy that World of Light opens with such a cool cutscene, but I'm doubtful that we'll get too much beyond that, especially considering how much work already went into all the character reveals. I don't want to go too deep into Nintendo's philosophies and what they do and don't like to do, but I just don't see it happening a second time. Though, the question must be asked, could they do it again? Obviously, there's unlimited potential here. There are lots of Nintendo characters and baddies and worlds they could play with. But when you think about it, it's unlikely that a follow-up would carry the same weight. The ice has already been broken here. The question of, what if all these characters were in one world together, has already been answered. Even so, I would like to see them try. Even if not in Smash, how about just something? I actually talked about the idea a bit in my video, The Amiibo Problem. Smash is great. It's the Nintendo crossover series, but I want to see more. Having all these characters actually interacting and moving through a real story with all their different abilities, I want it. I want more of it so bad. Having all Nintendo characters live in one world presents some canonical issues. We know that these characters do live in very different universes, so sticking them together in the way that Subspace Emissary did can result in them not being 100% true to themselves or their respective franchises. But what about establishing a multiverse kind of thing? Each franchise is separate until some event brings them all together, opens up portals and wormholes or whatever. They could work with that idea, make something out of it, something that could turn into a regular series. Epic adventure games with more cool stories and cutscenes and character interactions and Samus and Pikachu and Link and everything. Yeah, like I said, not gonna happen, but a guy can dream, and a guy can be happy that at least it did happen once. At least one time Nintendo said, let's go big, and gave us an experience our kid hearts had dreamed of our whole lives. I mean, at least I like Subspace Emissary. I don't know, maybe you thought it was dumb.